Have you ever had a dream that seemed more real than reality itself? One of those dreams that, even after you wake up, continues to pulsate inside you, as if something, or someone, was trying to tell you something important. She did. She woke up in the middle of the night, her heart racing, her eyes moist, and a strange, almost supernatural sensation invading the silent room. She could still clearly see the figure enveloped in light. The white wings, immense and serene, seemed to have left a trail in the air. But the most striking thing was the whisper, a soft, firm voice that said, "Look with the eyes of the soul." That night, Clara, an ordinary woman with a silent faith but a watchful heart, felt something different. She couldn't explain it, but something inside her had changed. And what seemed like just a spiritual dream, an intimate moment between her and the invisible, would soon reveal itself as a real divine sign, a warning coming from above, from those that many ignore but that could prevent so much pain. Do you believe in interventions of angels, in disguised messages that arrive when we least expect them but need them the most? Maybe you've already experienced this, an inexplicable premonition, a symbolic dream, a feeling in your chest that insists even when reason tries to suppress it. It's not just imagination. There are times when heaven moves in our favor. There are occasions when angels act, and we don't always realize it. Clara was living a relationship that in everyone's eyes seemed perfect. Affection, promises, happy moments. Nothing indicated that there was anything wrong, but what she could not see with the naked eye, the spiritual world had already detected. And when something threatens the heart of someone who walks with faith, the signs begin to emerge. At first subtle, then more vivid, and sometimes they come during sleep, when the soul is more open to what the physical eyes cannot see. What you are about to discover may surprise you, because this story goes beyond a simple betrayal. It makes us reflect on how many times we ignore the warnings of the invisible, how many times angel tries to protect us and, out of fear or disbelief, we simply silence the call. But Clara, even without understanding exactly what she had dreamed, chose to pay attention. And it was this choice, almost instinctive, almost divine, that changed everything. Have you ever had a dream like this? Have you ever felt like you were being warned by something bigger? Stay with me until the end, because this story may open your eyes to things you may be ignoring on your own path. And who knows, when you hear what happened to Clara, you may begin to realize that the signs were always there, just waiting for you to decide to look with the eyes of your soul. That morning after that dream with white wings, Clara didn't know it yet, but the universe was already moving to reveal a painful and liberating truth. And that's how it all began. That morning, as the sun timidly entered through the crack in the curtain, Clara felt her body present, but her mind still immersed in that mysterious dimension between dream and waking. Something inside her echoed, a gentle restlessness, as if the dream had not ended, only begun. It was as if a presence was with her, guiding her steps, even though she did not know exactly where to go. She didn't tell anyone that day. She kept the secret in her heart, like someone protecting a rare jewel, afraid that others would say it was just fantasy. But you know, there are experiences that can't be explained with words. Only those who live them feel them, and feel them deeply. And that's when I ask you, have you ever had a dream, a feeling or a sign that seemed to come from another plane? Have you ever felt like you were being warned by something that your eyes couldn't see, but your soul recognized? If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what touched you the most so far. Your story might be just what someone else needs to hear to wake up. And if this content is making you reflect, if at some point you felt a chill, a connection, or even that silence that only the truth provokes, leave your like. This helps a lot so that this message reaches more people who, like you, are looking for answers that don't fit into logic alone. And look, if you feel that this type of content speaks to your soul, real stories, spiritual signs, divine interventions, subscribe to the channel here. This is a safe space for us to share experiences, grow spiritually, and understand together the messages that the invisible tries to deliver to us. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more hearts that need a light, even if it is small. Clara didn't yet know that her dream about white wings was actually the first in a series of signs. The sky was speaking, and she, without even realizing it, was beginning to listen. Today you will learn the true story of a woman who was warned by an angel about a betrayal she couldn't see coming. And it all started with a simple dream. One of those that come suddenly, without explanation, but leave deep scars. It wasn't a nightmare. It wasn't just any daydream. It was a clear message with symbols and sensations that carried a hidden truth, which her mind wasn't yet ready to understand, but which her heart was already beginning to sense. Clara always believed in good. He was the kind of person who saw the positive side in everything and everyone. When he loved with his whole body. When I trusted to the end. And for a long time this trust was placed in someone who claimed to love, but hid secrets behind a gentle smile. They had been together for 3 years. To others they seemed perfect. Trips, happy photos, plans for the future. But behind the scenes of that relationship, there were silences that screamed. Clara ignored the signs, small absences, changes in behavior, a cell phone always turned, upside down. He's just tired, she repeated to herself. But the truth is that she didn't want to see it. Because sometimes love doesn't blind us. We are the ones who choose to close our eyes, afraid of what we might find. It was at this moment of emotional fragility that the dream happened. An ordinary night. Nothing special. But soon after, she closed her eyes. Clara found herself in front of a white field, where everything was silence and peace. In the center, a figure appeared, tall, serene, surrounded by white wings so intense that they seemed made of light. The figure did not speak, but conveyed a certainty. You are being deceived. The pain of the warning was greater than that of the deception itself. She woke up scared. Her heart was racing, her body was cold. She looked around the room, but everything seemed normal. It was still night. He was sleeping beside her peacefully, and yet something inside her told her that it wasn't just a dream. It was a warning, a sign. Her call to wake up from another kind of sleep, the one where we live denying what we already know. Clara spent the next few days in silence, paying attention. What had previously been ignored now stood out. The lame excuses, the deleted messages, the emotional absence. Little by little, the pieces began to fit together, and everything that had seemed like paranoia became clear. It wasn't her who was exaggerating. It was he who had left the relationship a long time ago, even though he was still physically there. But the most shocking thing is that even in the face of this painful revelation, Clara did not feel angry. She felt relief, because now she understood that someone, something, was trying to protect her. An angel, a messenger, a force that acts when we no longer have the strength to see things alone. It is important to say that this story is real. Clara shared her story in a spiritual support group, and the most impressive thing was realizing how many other people have gone through similar experiences. Dreams that seemed like messages, sensations that appeared out of nowhere, but later turned out to be warnings, inner voices that saved you from accidents, betrayals, and bad decisions. Maybe you yourself have experienced something like this and didn't realize it. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because there is a subtle frequency where angels communicate. It is not with words, but with images, intuitions, and movements around us. And knowing how to identify these signs can completely change the direction of our lives. They warn us about people, choices, paths, and the most curious thing is that these signs come in simple ways. A dream, a phrase, someone says out of the blue, an unexpected shiver, a presence that we do not see, but feel. Clara was not the only one, and perhaps if you look more closely you will realize that you too have been saved without knowing it. Comment here. That makes sense to me, and together we will give voice to these experiences that live between the visible and the invisible. Clara was the kind of woman who carried a silent strength. One of those people who, even when the world was falling apart, chose to smile with her eyes. She did have faith, the kind that doesn't need noise to be profound. She believed in God, in protection, in something greater. But, at the same time, she was always very rational. She liked to understand the reasons, to analyze, to separate what was emotion from what was fact. She was never easily impressed by signs or mystical stories. And perhaps that's why the experience she had left such a profound impact. Clara worked as a nurse. He had a busy, exhausting routine, but he never stopped taking care of those around him. He was the type of person who listens more than he speaks, who observes in silence but understands everything. And it was exactly this sensitivity, mixed with a discreet faith, that opened the way for something greater. She herself said she wasn't special, just someone with an open heart and a mind that, though analytical, was willing to accept what she couldn't control. Maybe you see yourself in her. Maybe you were once that person who believed only in logic, until life showed you that there is much more than meets the eye. Because what Clara experienced was not a figment of her imagination, nor the result of a repressed desire. It was real. It was powerful. It was transformative. And most importantly, it was a turning point. One of those revelations that changes not only the course of life, but also the mindset of those who went through it. At the time, Clara was already facing an internal turmoil. Her relationship seemed stable on the outside, but inside there was a growing emptiness. You know when everything seems right, but something inside you starts screaming that something is wrong? She tried to drown out this scream with distractions, with work, with routines. But at night, when she put her head on the pillow, the silence brought questions she couldn't answer. It was at that moment that the dream happened. And it wasn't just the content of the dream that messed with her. It was the feeling she woke up with. A strange peace, as if he had received an answer. Not an easy answer, but a necessary answer. The figure of light, which Clara recognized as an angel, did not say a word. But the look, the gesture, the presence, everything said, "The truth is before you. Stop running away from it." Clara still tried to deny it. She tried to rationalize it. It's just tiredness. It's just work stress, she thought. But the dream repeated itself. And with it, the message became even clearer. You are being deceived. The pain of this revelation was immense, but with it came a liberation. The truth, as hard as it was finally touching her. And the most intriguing thing is that, even with her heart broken, she felt a protection around her, as if something bigger was watching over her all the time. Even when she couldn't realize it, this feeling of being accompanied, of not being alone, intensified in the following days. Small things began to take on meaning. A song that played on the radio and seemed to speak to her. A verse that she read by chance and responded exactly to what she was feeling. A look from a patient in the hospital, full of silent gratitude that reminded her of her worth. It was as if the entire universe was aligned to help her see what she had spent so long trying to hide. Clara began to change, first on the inside, then, little by little, on the outside as well. She began to ask herself deeper questions. She stopped accepting less than she deserved. She made difficult but necessary decisions. She distanced herself from people who drained her energy and approached others who lit her path. It was during this process that she understood that the angel who had appeared in her dream had not come just to reveal a betrayal. He had come to guide her back to herself. Because sometimes life needs to break us down so that we can rebuild ourselves the right way. And this reconstruction begins when we decide to listen to what we usually silence. Our instinct, our intuition, our soul. Clara, with her rationality and faith, with her pure heart and her silent courage, is the portrait of so many people who live internal battles that are invisible to the eyes of the world. And that is why her story touches us so deeply. Because she is not a distant heroine, she is real. She is just like you and me, and it wasn't just the dream that showed the truth. It was also the details that had previously been ignored that began to reveal themselves as pieces of a larger puzzle. The change in the tone of his voice, the vague answers, the disguised lack of commitment. But now Clara saw everything with different eyes. She no longer needed proof. She no longer needed confrontation. What she needed, she already had. awareness. And with it came the strength to decide. This decision was not easy. Ending a cycle, even when it is already broken, takes courage. But Clara knew she was no longer alone. Because once you hear the voice of the unseen, the one that whispers truths when the world screams lies, there is no way to ignore it. And that voice, that presence, that silent touch, is what many call an angel. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when we talk about angels, we are not just talking about celestial beings with wings and light. We are talking about signs, of connections, of messages that arrive at unexpected moments to guide us. Sometimes an angel manifests itself in the gaze of someone who crosses our path, in a word spoken by chance, in a hunch that saves, in a situation that seems like a tragedy, but is a deliverance. The real impact is in recognizing that there is something beyond, something that operates behind the scenes of life, and that has the mission of protecting us from what we are not ready to face alone. Write in the comments, "I'm on this journey," too, because when we share these experiences even in silence, we build a space where the invisible begins to be noticed, and the journey ceases to be solitary. To outsiders, Clara had one of those relationships that inspires sighs and positive comments at family dinners. It was common to hear, "You two were made for each other. What a blessed couple. It's a pleasure to see your love." He was affectionate in the right measure, knew exactly the right words to calm her down, praised her strength, admired her dedication to work, and had that easy smile that won over even the most skeptical. He was the kind of man who would open the car door, make coffee when she arrived exhausted, and made a point of holding her hand in public, as if to say to the world, "She's mine." Everything seemed to be in place, but what no one saw was the silence that began to grow between them when the doors closed. Small absences, justified naturally. Conversations that used to flow and now became superficial. Clara, who had always been good at perceiving nuances, began to notice that the sparkle in his eyes appeared more when he had his cell phone in his hand than when he was talking to her. Still, she tried to push away any negative thoughts. After all, everything indicated that he was a good man. And when the whole world reinforces this image, the doubt that arises within you seems wrong, as if it were the result of your insecurity, not reality. This is the most subtle pitfall of emotional dissonance, when what you feel doesn't match what you see. This is when your body sends signals, but your mind rationalizes, trying to keep everything in balance. Clara spent months in this state, between the discomfort that I couldn't name and the perfect image that everyone helped to maintain. It was like being inside a setting too beautiful to question, but with invisible cracks that threatened to collapse at any moment. And yet, there were good moments. Moments that were confusing, an unexpected trip, a romantic dinner, an "I love you" said at the right moment. It made her wonder if she wasn't exaggerating, if she wasn't being ungrateful for doubting someone who treated her so well. But there was one detail she couldn't ignore, that constant feeling of being emotionally alone, even when she was accompanied. That absence disguised as presence. The connection that, although it still existed in gestures, seemed to have been lost in essence. It's hard to admit that what seems perfect can be sick inside. And even more difficult is accepting that, sometimes, what holds us back is not true love, but the attachment to the image of a love that no longer exists. Clara was at that point in the journey, trying to balance your reason with the warnings of your soul. That was why the dream shook her so much, because he brought to light what, deep down, she already knew. He just tore away the veil she insisted on keeping. What Clara began to realize is that the problem was not what he did, but what he hid. And we are not talking about grand gestures, but about the small attitudes that betray the truth. A look that looks away, a touch that cools, an emotional absence that little by little becomes more intense than any physical presence. All of this creates an invisible tension that hangs heavy in the air, slowly eroding. And when a person is sensitive like Clara was, this tension becomes unbearable. She began to remember details she had overlooked. On their anniversary, he forgot the date. When he realized his mistake, he improvised something, and Clara smiled, saying that everything was fine. But it wasn't. When she got sick and went to the hospital, He took a long time to arrive, and when he did, he seemed worried but distant, as if he was there only because he knew it was the right thing to do. These are things like that, on their own, might go unnoticed. But when they accumulate, they form a dark puzzle that reveals the hidden truth behind appearances. And it's curious how the mind tries to protect itself from what it is not yet ready to accept. Clara found herself justifying his behavior, telling herself that all couples go through phases. But deep down, I already knew something about her. It wasn't just a phase. It was the revelation that the relationship that seemed perfect was sustained by carefully constructed illusions. It was like being in a house that was beautiful on the outside, but with compromised structures, and continuing there would be the same as waiting for something that wasn't made to last to collapse. And it is exactly here that the most silent struggle begins, and perhaps the most painful, the kind of battle that no one sees, but that consumes you from within. Clara wanted to believe that everything was fine, that the dream was just a creation of her tired mind, that the gestures of affection he showed her were still real, still had roots. She repeated to herself phrases like, "He loves me, it's just in my head," or "I can't keep feeding paranoia because of a nocturnal daydream." But there was something behind it all, a tension that was not visible but that vibrated in the air, a presence that seemed to hide between the empty spaces of conversations, in the strange silences, in the automatic smiles. Clara tried to push this feeling away, like someone slamming a door shut, but she always felt like something on the other side was trying to get in. And the curious thing is that even when the universe starts screaming, through dreams, premonitions, unexpected encounters, or phrases that strike like arrows, the heart still tries to hold on to what is comfortable. There is a natural resistance within us to facing what could destroy the image we have built with so much effort. The truth can be liberating, but before that it is often deeply uncomfortable. Clara didn't want to doubt. I didn't want to think badly of him. I didn't want to carry the weight of an unproven suspicion. And that's where one of the mind's cruelest traps lies, the fear of seeing what's right before our eyes. Because if she saw clearly, she would have to act, you would have to make decisions. I would have to leave the zone where the pain still seemed bearable and enter a territory where everything could fall apart. This is the denial phase, and it is more common than it seems. How many times do we ignore the signs because we are afraid of what we will find if we look deeper? How many times do we accept emotional crumbs because we are afraid of being alone with our own truth? Clara, at that moment, was divided between two worlds, the one that seemed safe, but that no longer made sense, and the one that called to her from within, but that she still couldn't name. She began to question herself. Little questions would pop up at random moments, while brushing her teeth, driving, listening to music. Why is he so distant even though he's right next to me? Why do I feel this tightness even when he smiles at me? What if I'm betraying myself by trying to keep this going? But at the same time, guilt came. A weight that was almost invisible, but that pressed down on his shoulders like a cold stone. Because loving someone and at the same time distrusting that person is one of the most disconcerting experiences there is. It feels like an internal break, as if the heart and mind speak different languages. And when this happens, the soul cries out for balance. However, even in the face of doubt, Clara preferred to remain silent. She put a smile on her face, light makeup on her eyes, and went about her day as if nothing was out of place. Because sometimes, pretending to be normal is easier than facing the chaos that hides deep within your soul. But this pretense has a price, and sooner or later it takes its toll. The most delicate thing about this phase is that it doesn't happen abruptly. It's subtle. You start to keep quiet about small things. Then you avoid certain subjects. Then you swallow gestures that would have been unacceptable before. And before you know it, you've already built a bubble around your own perception. A kind of emotional shield to avoid feeling what deep down you already know. Clara felt this, but she didn't want to admit it. Not yet. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when the soul begins to awaken and the truth insists on knocking on the door, there is no way to continue ignoring it. And at this point in the journey, Everything that was hidden begins to come to the surface, with a force that sometimes catches us off guard. Write it down. I'm on this journey too. And then, as if the universe was tired of its attempt to deny what could no longer be denied, the small revelations began to emerge. First, it was a message too quick to be normal. She barely turned her head and saw him hide his cell phone in his pocket, like someone keeping a secret in a cold room. Then he refused the call with an uneasy look, as if he had been caught in an unconfessable act. And finally, that absence that made no sense, a commitment that wasn't mentioned, an excuse that seemed to have been hastily cobbled together. Clara did not confront. Not yet. But inside, it was like sand was starting to slip through his fingers. I remembered the dream, from the figure of light, from the white field, and now everything made a little more sense. It was as if in that moment of sleep the soul had tried to warn her, as if a wiser part of her already knew what her physical eyes could not yet see. Pay attention, the subtle voice inside. Her repeated, growing clearer and clearer, she began to observe. Not as someone who wants to keep watch, but as someone who tries to put together the pieces of a puzzle left behind. His routine had slip-ups that previously went unnoticed. The words were always too measured and the answers rehearsed. He began to notice the spaces, the moments when he seemed to be there but wasn't, the body present, the soul distant, as if your heart was somewhere else, or with someone else. And at times like these we understand that the truth doesn't usually come with fanfare. It comes in the details, in the gaze that turns away, in the touch that cools, in the laughter that no longer echoes with the same sincerity. Clara had no proof, but intuition, that ancient ally of the soul, was already whispering truths that were difficult to ignore. It was as if everything around began to show that the veil was falling. And once this starts, there is no way you can put everything back together as if nothing happened. The strangest thing is that we think we're going to collapse when we start to realize these things. But in fact, a strange, almost cold lucidity comes over us. It's like being in the middle of a storm and yet clearly seeing every drop that falls. Clara, little by little, stopped being just a spectator of her own story and began to take on the role of someone who needs to make decisions. Because when revelations appear, even if they're small, they don't come by chance. They're like lighthouses. They point out a path, and to ignore that path is to continue walking in the dark. She didn't tell anyone. He kept everything silent, like someone carrying a truth that still needs to mature. But inside her, the impact had already begun. It was like an invisible crack in a wall that once seemed solid, and when that happens, there's no point in pretending, because what is behind begins to leak out, through attitudes, through looks, through the energy that changes. Clara was different, not in a way that others would notice right away, but in a way that only those who have been through it would recognize. A mixture of loss and lucidity, of sadness and courage. She began to ask herself deeper questions. What am I doing here? Am I living or just trying to hold on to something that no longer exists? Why do I settle for less than I deserve? What really holds me back? These questions are powerful because they don't ask for ready-made answers. They push you inward. They force you to rummage through internal drawers that you didn't even know still held unresolved things, and little by little, change began to happen. Not in the way most people expect, not with explosive breakups or dramatic confrontations, but with the quiet strength of someone who is beginning to see. Clara began to look into his eyes differently. It was no longer the look of someone seeking approval or love. It was the look of someone who wants to understand where she went wrong, and if it is still worth finding herself there. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because there is a point in the journey where the revelations become impossible to ignore, and it is at that point that decisions need to be made, even if they hurt, even if they bring losses, even if they change everything. Comment here. That makes sense to me, because the journey to hidden truth is not always linear or comfortable. It's as if we were exploring the backstage of a play that until then seemed perfect, but which little by little begins to reveal its flaws and darkest secrets. Clara felt exactly that, a mixture of tension and uneasiness that only grows as small revelations accumulate until the inevitable moment of discovery arrives. And that's exactly how it happened. After days of silent doubts and cautious observations, the time came when the truth came out irrefutably. A moment, seemingly banal, but which carried with it all the weight of a universe about to collapse. She found the evidence she never imagined she would have to face: a hidden message, an exposed detail, a clear and concrete piece of evidence. The shock was immediate, a sensation that ran through her body like an electric shock, leaving her stunned and, at the same time, inexplicably protected. This contradictory feeling is fascinating. On the one hand, the heart breaks into 1,000 pieces, devastated by the betrayal that until then had been just a silent fear. On the other, there comes this strange feeling of relief, almost as if a heavy veil has been lifted, freeing the person from the prison of doubt and denial. It is as if the soul is saying, "Finally, you can stop carrying this invisible weight." The discovery, however painful it may be, brings with it the gift of clarity. It is the truth that illuminates, even if it is uncomfortable. Clara understood in that moment that the dream had not been just a passing warning or a fantasy of a tired mind. It had been much more, a deliverance, a veiled gift from the universe, so that she could protect herself before it was too late. That white field, that light, that sense of peace in the dream now made perfect sense. She had been guided by something greater, by a force that transcended what we could see or touch. It was her intuition transformed into reality, her inner truth crystallizing in the physical world. And this experience reveals a lot about our mindset when faced with life's transformations. We often resist the truth because it has a profound impact on our emotional stability, our beliefs, and the way we see the world. But ironically, it is precisely this hidden truth that has the power to free us from illusion and open the way to a new phase, a journey of self-knowledge and reconstruction. When the truth comes out, everything changes. Decisions that previously seemed distant or impossible become urgent and clear. Our mind, previously dominated by fear and doubt, begins to reprogram itself to see beyond appearances. It is an intense process of transformation, which not only affects the person directly involved, but reverberates in all areas of life, in relationships, in the way of thinking, in the choices that shape the future. At this point, we realize that life is not just about what happens outside, but about how we choose to interpret and react to events. Discovering the truth can be a turning point, a moment that shakes the foundations of our reality and invites us to rethink everything, from limiting beliefs to the patterns we held to try to maintain a false sense of control. And it is precisely at this time that the opportunity for a turnaround arises. Because accepting the truth, no matter how painful it may be, is the first step towards building something new, more authentic, and aligned with our essence. It is as if the initial impact was a portal, a passage to a journey of profound and liberating transformation. Throughout this process, what is revealed behind the scenes are the multiple layers of the human soul, its strength, its fragility, its nuances. Clara, at that moment, was no longer just a victim of circumstances, but someone who was beginning to find herself again. The pain of discovery also brought the seed of courage, that courage that is born from truth and that drives us to move forward, even when everything seems to be falling apart. Now, as this new reality takes hold, it is possible to feel the internal movement of change. It is not an easy or linear path, but it is essential for the transformation to actually happen. It is an invitation for each of us to look within, face our own shadows, and find the strength to reinvent ourselves. From this experience, the mentality changes. The way you look at yourself and the world becomes more realistic, less idealized. The journey becomes deeper, because it includes not only moments of joy and achievement, but also difficult trials, challenges that test our resilience and ability to love, forgive, and move forward. And it is in this movement that many revelations continue to emerge, not only about each other, but about who we really are and what we are willing to accept or transform in our lives. Each choice, each decision, begins to carry a greater meaning, because we know that the truth, even if harsh, is the basis for a new construction. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding the impact of this discovery and how it shapes our decisions is essential for anyone experiencing real transformation. Let's dive into the details of this renewed mindset and the revelations that only come when we have the courage to face what's hidden behind appearances. Comment: I'm on this journey too. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because there is something almost magical, almost subtle in this way the universe, or as some like to call it, the angels, tries to communicate with us. It's not always a loud call, one that you can't ignore. Often it is almost imperceptible, a silent message that arrives wrapped in dreams, sensations, small signs that go unnoticed if we are not attentive. It is in this delicacy that true wisdom resides, the profound impact that can transform our entire journey. Clara, in that moment of reflection, realized that these warnings that we so often disregard or mistake for coincidences have a clear purpose: to protect us. They are persistent yet discreet, attempts to warn us when we are about to make decisions that could lead us down dangerous or painful paths. It is as if these angels spoke to us in subtle codes, in the language of emotions, dreams, and instincts, a language that requires calm, sensitivity, and openness to be understood. This perception changes everything. Our mindset begins to include this internal listening, this connection with something greater than mere rationality. Behind the scenes of life, it is in this invisible space that true revelations occur. A dream that seemed meaningless, an insistent intuition, a feeling that cannot be explained but cannot be ignored. All of this is part of the script of the transformation we are experiencing, even if we do not know exactly when or how it will unfold. The impact of this form of communication lies in its ability to prepare us, even before the most difficult truth presents itself. It's a kind of protection that works in the details, almost like a constant whisper that says, "Pay attention. This matters." And the most curious thing is that we are not always willing to listen. Often we are so involved in our routine, our beliefs, our fears, or our hopes, that we let these messages pass us by, without realizing that they are the keys to avoiding greater suffering or finding paths to healing. When we stop to reflect on this, we understand that life is made up of these moments of pause and listening. They are what connect us with the essence of who we are and with the hidden truth that only time reveals. It is a journey of self-discovery that requires courage to dive deep, to face our own emotions, to embrace what comes from the unconscious, and transform this learning into strength to move forward. Clara, when revisiting this experience, felt this connection. She understood that angels are not necessarily distant figures, but rather symbols of our own intuition, of our inner wisdom that insists on guiding us even when we try to ignore it. And it is this gentle voice, this invisible presence that often saves us without us realizing it, leading us beyond fear to a place where truth is an instrument of liberation. This reflection is an invitation for each of us to open our eyes to the signs that arrive in the silence, to the small revelations that come in the form of dreams, feelings, or unexpected situations. Because it is in this subtle terrain that real transformation takes place, the one that changes not only the course of our history, but the way we view life and the decisions that shape our destiny. Thinking about angels in this way broadens our understanding of the impact that conscious choices have on our journey. The truth stops being something scary and becomes a beacon that lights the way, a starting point for a renewed mindset, more aligned with our essence and with what really matters. It is a process that, although delicate, is incredibly powerful, as it reveals that even when everything seems uncertain, there is an invisible force that protects and guides us, and it is precisely this strength that makes all the difference. In times when the veil of illusion begins to fall, in situations where the discomfort of doubt invites us to look within, beyond appearances, at this moment, the journey takes on a new meaning, because it becomes a story of transformation, of someone who chooses not only to survive, but to reinvent themselves, seeking the truth as a path to inner freedom. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because understanding how these little voices inside us shape our decisions is essential for anyone who wants to live a full and authentic life. Let's explore how actively listening to these messages can reveal hidden truths that impact not only our reality, but also the way we approach our challenges and opportunities. Comment there. That makes sense to me. Because you see, the issue is not just recognizing that a warning can come in a discreet way, but understanding the transformative power that this type of communication can have on our entire lives. Often the mindset we cultivate prevents us from noticing these messages. We are so immersed in our routines, thoughts, and concerns that we miss the true revelations that are right there, before our eyes and inside our hearts. This hidden truth has an impact that goes far beyond what we imagine. It's not just about receiving a wake-up call or a fleeting intuition. It's about an invitation to a profound journey of self-discovery and growth, a journey in which we begin to understand that the decisions we make, even the small and seemingly insignificant ones, are the ones that shape our destiny. Therefore, when a strange dream arises or an insistent feeling knocks on the mind's door, the transformation begins right there, behind the scenes of consciousness. Clara, reflecting on all this, realized that spirituality, this invisible force that touches our soul, is closely linked to our ability to listen. It's not just about believing, but about being open to feeling what often cannot be explained by logic, but which reveals a deep truth about who we are and what really matters. And this is not something distant or reserved for a few. It is a potential that everyone carries, a natural connection that, when activated, brings to light a greater meaning to each event in life. This openness, this active listening, creates a new perception, a kind of filter that helps distinguish what is important from what is just noise. It is as if the veil that covered certain details began to fall, revealing the truth with surprising clarity. This clarity, in turn, empowers because it brings awareness to decisions. And when we are aware, we stop being mere spectators of life and become protagonists, responsible for the impact that our choices will have on our path. Transformation happens at the exact moment we begin to value these signs, these little voices that guide us. It is at this point that the journey takes on new meaning, because we begin to see difficulties and doubts, not as obstacles, but as part of the learning and strengthening process. Spirituality manifests itself there, in our daily lives, in the decisions we make, in the small actions that demonstrate our connection with something greater, whether it is called intuition, angels, or simply the inner voice that has always been there. And it is not uncommon for revelations to emerge in the midst of this change in perspective that challenge everything we believed until then. Hidden truths begin to appear. Pieces of the puzzle that were previously out of place finally fit together, and everything takes on a different meaning. It is an experience that transforms not only our understanding, but also the way we feel and act in the world. The impact of this reverberates in all areas of life, opening doors to an existence more aligned with our essence. Now I ask you, have you ever received a divine warning, but didn't realize it? It could have been a strange dream, an unexplained feeling, a sudden sensation that you dismissed. Maybe these signs went unnoticed, mistaken for simple coincidences, or the result of tiredness from the routine. But what if there was an invisible hand trying to protect you? What if that intuition, however weak it may have seemed, was a call for an important transformation? This invitation to look more closely at the details of our lives is in fact an invitation to discover the power we have within ourselves. The power to listen, to decide, to change. Because what is at stake is not just a question of faith, but of self-knowledge and the courage to face the truth, no matter how hard it may be. It is in this process that we become able to create a mindset that not only accepts the unknown, but uses it as fuel for growth. It's fascinating to think about the behind-the-scenes nature of this experience, the invisible forces that silently work to guide us. Often it is these moments of revelation that define the course of our story, that make us choose between continuing in our comfort zone or embracing the transformation that, although challenging, leads us to a more authentic and true life. It is an invitation to trust the process, to believe that even when we do not understand why, there is a hand that supports us and a path that is drawn before us. And if, like Clara, you start paying more attention to these signs, who knows what incredible revelations might emerge? What would it be like to realize that your own intuition is a powerful tool, a kind of personal guardian angel, ready to guide your steps even when the path seems dark? This awakening is part of a journey that transforms not only the way we live, but the way we relate to ourselves and the world around us. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because the key to this transformation lies precisely in how we choose to respond to these signals. It's not just about receiving warnings, but about using this information to make conscious decisions, to shape a mindset that values truth and authenticity above all else. This is the true power that the behind the scenes of this story reveals to us, the ability to turn the tables, to turn what seemed like a challenge into an opportunity for growth and renewal. Comment: I'm on this journey too. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you for being part of this genuine conversation with me. This exchange of experiences and reflections is what gives meaning to all of this, and that's why I invite you to continue this journey with me. If what you heard made any sense or opened up a new perspective, how about leaving a comment saying, "I'm with you until the end"? It's a simple way for us to connect, to show that we're together on this journey of transformation. And of course, if this content touched your soul in any way, leave a like on the video. It's a silent but powerful way of recognizing the value we share. This gesture helps create that good energy between us, the kind that inspires us to continue discovering and learning. There is a video here that complements this subject, with other stories and insights that can help you see life with even more clarity. Click there and stay with me there, because this journey is just beginning, and there are many more interesting revelations to come. This realization brought pain, but also liberation, because when you start to see reality without the filters of blind hope, something awakens inside you, a kind of lucidity that, even though it hurts, brings clarity. Clara felt this, and for the first time she began to ask herself if she deserved to live with someone who only seemed to love her, or if she deserved someone who truly loved her, with presence, with dedication, with truth. This is where many people get lost, trying to hold on to what was once beautiful, even when it isn't anymore. And it is at this point in the journey that many lives stagnate. But Clara chose not to freeze. He chose to move, even though he didn't know where to yet. And it was this decision, silent but powerful, that began to pave the way for deeper changes. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because what Clara began to experience was not just the end of a relationship. It was the beginning of an inner transformation, and every transformation begins with a decision to stop lying to yourself. Because there is nothing more dangerous than holding on to a lie just because it comforts you. The truth, no matter how hard it is, has a power that liberates, and it is this power that Clara began to experience. Comment here: that makes sense to me, because sometimes what we need most is validation of what we feel, even if the whole world insists on saying otherwise. That night, Clara fell asleep with her heart in conflict. There was a turmoil inside her that could not be silenced even with the accumulated exhaustion of the past few days. The body was resting, but something in her remained awake, as if waiting for an answer that life had not yet delivered. And it was in this state that the dream began, not as an ordinary daydream, but as if she had been transported to another plane of existence, where everything was suspended in time and meaning. She found herself in a completely white field. It wasn't snow. It was something more ethereal. The ground seemed to be made of compact clouds, faintly illuminated by a soft light that had no visible source. The silence was absolute. Not the oppressive kind of silence, but a deep, almost sacred silence, as if everything around was in prayer. Clara walked slowly, barefoot, feeling a lightness beneath her feet that she had never known before. There was no pain, no rush, no fear, just the feeling that something very important was about to happen. Then she saw. In the distance, amidst the seemingly endless whiteness, a figure approached. I didn't walk. It glided across the field as if it were made from the very essence of that place. When she got closer, Clara realized it was a being with wings, white, long, radiant, but not blinding. The creature, although enveloped in light, had soft features and a serene face, which conveyed compassion and authority at the same time. He was not an angel like the ones we see painted in churches. It was more old, more real, as if it were the living representation of something that the soul has always known, but the mind has forgotten. Clara couldn't speak, but she didn't need to. She felt that the being understood everything inside her, every doubt, every tear, every silence that had been swallowed for years. It was then that the being came even closer. Its wings opened like a shelter, and in a gentle gesture, it bent down until it was next to her face. There was no movement of its lips, but she heard the phrase with absolute clarity, as if it had been breathed directly into her chest. "Look with the eyes of the soul." Those words echoed throughout the place. "Look with the eyes of your soul." It wasn't a suggestion. It was a call, a command that cut through all logic and went straight to the point. Clara felt the ground vibrate slightly, as if the world she knew was about to change. And in that instant, her eyes opened within the dream itself. Not her physical eyes, but something more internal, more intuitive. She looked around, and suddenly the white field began to reveal what had previously been hidden. Figures began to appear in the distance. Scenes from her own life appeared like shadows dancing on the horizon. There she saw the day she cried alone in the bathroom, after yet another pointless argument. She saw the night she tried to talk to him, and he pretended to be asleep. She saw the messages she suspected but never had the courage to confront. She saw the moment she hugged a gift he gave her, smiling on the outside, but feeling inside that there was guilt hidden in that gesture. It was as if everything was being shown in a raw way, without the filter of love, without the layers of self-deception. The winged being said nothing more. "I just watched." And Clara understood. That was the truth that his soul already knew, but his heart refused to accept. And for the first time, she saw, not with the eyes of reason, which tried to justify, but with the eyes of the soul which only recognize what is. The force of that moment was almost unbearable. Clara felt her chest open, as if something very old was being ripped out. It was pain, yes, but it was a purifying pain, the pain of someone who is finally free from lies. And along with that pain came peace, because when the truth arrives, it doesn't just come to hurt, it comes to heal, to start over, to give birth to a new consciousness, more lucid, more connected. When Clara woke up, there were tears on her pillow, but they weren't tears of sadness, they were tears of revelation. She knew that this dream wasn't just a game of the mind. It was a message, a call, a clear sign that it was time to stop looking for answers outside and start looking inside. Because it is inside that the hidden truth that we so often insist on ignoring lives. And from that moment on, she would never be the same again. It's curious how certain moments in life seem loaded with a symbolism that we only understand with time. Sometimes we need to go through the unknown to recognize what was already inside. Just all along, that being with white wings didn't need to explain anything. His presence alone was a reminder of something greater, deeper, that goes beyond human pain and fragile appearances. It was as if he were saying, "You always knew. You just needed to remember." Clara got out of bed and felt the world was different. The colors, the sounds, everything seemed more real and at the same time lighter. It was as if the vision of the soul had left a mark on her physical eyes. And, in fact, it had. Because when you see with your soul, you can no longer unsee it. You can no longer pretend you didn't see it. It is the beginning of a journey from which there is no turning back, and for that very reason, it has such transformative power. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because from that dream on, Clara began to realize that everything, in life, absolutely everything, is constantly sending us signals, little whispers that we try to silence in the name of stability, routine, and comfort zone. But there comes a time when ignoring these signals costs more than facing them. And when that time comes, something changes. Something awakens inside us and begins to guide our decisions with a force that no longer accepts negotiations with fear. Clara understood that the presence of that winged being was not something external, but a part of herself, a part that she had forgotten, a voice that at some point in her childhood she had perhaps heard more clearly before the world taught her that she had to keep quiet about what she felt to please others. And now that voice returned with power, with purpose, with direction. Not to give all the answers, but to remind her that the soul already carries the right questions, and whoever learns to listen to it begins to walk a path that has roots and wings. Write it down. I'm on this journey too. Because sometimes all we need is to recognize that we are not alone in the midst of the revelations that come our way, and that's when everything starts to take on a new shape. Because when you start to trust the signs, not as random coincidences but as parts of a subtle and intelligent plan, the path stops being heavy. It continues to be challenging, yes, but it gains direction. And when there is direction, there is strength. Clara felt this in the little things, in the way she looked at the sky, how she listened to an old song, how she noticed people's looks. It was as if life was all the time trying to talk to her, and now finally she was listening. If you also felt this calling, this desire to look deeper and understand what is behind the moments that seem like just coincidence, then perhaps what I have prepared can help you even more on this journey. It is something simple, direct, and done with great care. Reading from your birth angel. This material is complementary to what we talked about here and can save you a lot of time in practice because it helps you connect with the personalized guidance of the angelic kingdom to navigate powerful transformations with more clarity. If it makes sense to you, take a look at the material I left below. It's in the description, but I might take it down in the next few days. So if it's useful to you, take advantage of it while it's still available. Now, back to the story, because what happened after this awakening was even more unexpected. Clara woke up that day with a strange feeling in her chest, as if she had left something incomplete within the dream. The white field still danced in her mind, the silence thick as fog, and the whispered phrase, "Look with the eyes of the soul." It seemed to echo inside her like a beat out of rhythm with reality. But as she prepared the coffee, watching the steam rise from the cup, she shook her head and muttered to herself, "It was just a dream, right?"